Hello everyone, Mr. Nacho here, and today I wanted to share with you my hybrid DPS dot and mod damage build. It utilizes both the Ritualist class and the Archon class. The skill that we have chosen for Ritualist is Miasma, which basically lets us activate our Honey Crystal. And for the Archon, we have a choice of two very useful skills. One would be the Reality Rune, and the other one is the Chaos Gate. Both of them are extremely useful, depends on the situation. In fights like, let's say, Talrafa, wherever he spawns the orbs, Reality Rune would be preferred. And whenever you just want to do more DPS and get your mod quicker, then Chaos Gate would be the preferred option. When it comes to the armor that we are wearing, it's the Navigator's Helm, Technician Bodyplate, Night Stalker Pants, and Spacewalker Gloves. I think that the drip looks quite awesome, if I do say so myself. When it comes to the main idea of the build, it's basically to stack as many stacks of corrosive, actually as many stacks of corroded as possible, and to maximize our acid damage. So we will be utilizing the acid stone as well. On top of that, the Ahane crystal, the singed ring, and the timekeeper's jewel. The way that these work with one another is that we will activate the miasma skill that will last for 40 seconds and has a cooldown of 36 seconds, so that we have the fully stacked Ahane crystal, which is 20% extra damage, and this is multiplicative, and it lasts so long thanks to the timekeeper's jewel. Then we have the singed ring, simply because we are using the sparkfire shotgun, which will make our enemies be on fire all the time, on top of the fire that will be from miasma. And if we are having issues with applying the fire, we can also just use the black tar grenade, which will apply fire for 40 seconds if we manage to hit enemy with this and then shoot them. The mod that we have on it is the corrosive rounds, which increases our crit chance and gives us acid damage and applies corroded status. And on top of that, we have Maelstrom plus 10 on it, which increases this weapon's elemental damage by 10%, which is a lot of the damage that we will be dealing, because we will have the corrosive rounds up almost all the time thanks to the Archon and Maelstrom, and it increases it by 10% for each unique elemental status effect on the target. And we will have all three of them, which is the Overloaded, Corroded, and Burning, thanks to Miasma. So we will have basically 30% increased damage on this weapon, and then we will have increased mod power generation of elemental damage and elemental status damage by 20%. So we will have our corrosive rounds back very, very quickly. And this works as a both dot damage build, so we will deal a ton of damage with the acid and corroded dots that we apply. But on top of that, since we have Archon and since we have Ritualist, we will be able to deal a ton of damage with the Sparkfire shotgun itself. Simply because whenever you activate the mod, this actually applies the Amplify passive from Archon, which increases the mod damage by 50%. So whenever we are just doing our basic shots with corrosive rounds on, they will deal 50% more damage, which is a bigger buff than you can get from, let's say, Hunter or Gunslinger or anything else. So this is both a gun build and a dot build at the same time. It's a hybrid. You will see how it performs at the end, as usual, whenever I fight some bosses, but it performs extremely, extremely well. So thanks to this, we already have 2 stacks of corroded, one from Miasma, one from the corrosive rounds. The next one comes from the Tainted Blade, which we have put on the World's Edge. You might as well just go for the Krelax to apply another overloaded stack. You might want to go for the Hero's Sword, and again, you would like to apply Tainted Blade to it, so you will be able to apply another stack of Corroded, or even the Huntress Spear will work. It's just your personal preference. I really like the World's Edge, so I'm using it right now. But I think that the better option overall would be the Krelax. And the last one, we have the Nebula with Fetid Wounds, which means that we will apply 2 more stacks of Corroded. And on top of that, we have the Nanoswarm that will deal acid damage, which will get buffed by our Acid Stone, which will get buffed by our Honey Crystal, which will get buffed by our Singed Ring, since we will be able to set the enemy on fire with the Miasma skill and the Sparkfire shotgun. And on top of that, it will deal 50% increased damage because we are running Archon. And not only that, we have the Ritualist, which increases all damage to enemies affected by negative status effects by 20%, so that the mod of the Nebula, the Nanoswarm, will deal some really high damage. And it has only 637.5 mod power requirement, so we will have it up all the time. Whenever it finishes, we just need a few shots and we will have it back. When it comes to the last piece of the jewelry, we have the Effluvium Enhancer, which increases our acid damage by 20% and corrosive damage by 50%. So all of the dots that we apply, the corroded stacks, will be even more damaging, and this will be by 50%, but the corroded stacks are also acid damage, so they will double dip with this amulet, and they will double dip with this ring, and the acid damage actually increases the corroded stacks, so it will be increased by more than 50%. You'll see that when we get to like 5 or 6 stacks of corroded on an enemy, then they will just basically keep taking a ton of damage. The clip with the Ravager, we didn't even have to finish him off. I was just looking at him while he was running around and he just died. So the dots are extremely powerful with this build, but we are able to crit for like 2500 whenever we hit the weak spot with this shotgun. And I think that this is decent enough. When it comes to some alternatives, if you want to change one of the rings or you don't have them, the best option for now, I think, would be to use the Band of the Fanatic, simply because it is bugged right now and it increases the status effect damage by 25%, but it doesn't reduce the status effect duration by 65%. If it ever gets fixed, then it won't really have a place in this build, but for now, this would be the best one to use. The other great one would be the Alumni Ring, simply because it increases elemental damage by 10%, so that's nice, we want elemental damage. The other ring that would work great is the Red Ring of Death, to apply even more stacks of corroded. We might even go for something like the Shard Banded Ring to increase our mod damage even further. The Targeting Jewel is also a very useful option, simply because it allows our shotgun to be effective at longer ranges. And the Stone of Balance is always good because it's an all damage increase. 7% is nothing to scoff at. I think that this is a very good ring as well. When it comes to our Relic and Relic Fragments, I went for the Salvaged Heart, but there are options that you can go with. Other would be the Constrained Heart, it's very good. The regular Dragon Heart is extremely powerful. The Enlarged Heart is very good. The Tranquil Heart is also extremely powerful, and other than that, it's just personal preference. Even like Ripened Heart or the Void Heart would be very useful. The Shielded Heart might be good for you as well. It just depends on your playstyle. All of them are extremely viable. When it comes to the Relic Fragments though, we have the ranged crit chance and crit damage, because with this build we have 10% from Ritualist, 10% from Archon, so this is 20% already. Then we have 10% from our ranged crit chance Relic Fragment, which is 30%. Then we have 5% from the shotgun itself, so it's 35%. And then we have corrosive rounds, which is 15%. So this is 50% crit chance. So this is really nothing to scoff at. Every other shot that we do will be a crit, so this is very good. So you have actually the range crit damage actually gives us plus 10% damage, so you might actually just want to go with something like the range damage if you prefer. But I think that the range crit damage will be a little bit better over long time. And the last fragment that we use is the elemental damage, which is obvious and, well, we just have to use it in this build. There is no other way. When it comes to the traits, we have long shot to make sure that our shotgun actually has some more range, because it only has 12 meters by default. With long shot it goes up to 18 meters, so this is actually useful. Regrow, Fortify and Triage and Vigor to have as much HP, as much armor, and as much HP regeneration as possible. Spirit and Expertise because of the cooldowns and mod power generation. Amplitude, simply because it affects both the Reality Rune and the Miasma skill, so its effect will be bigger. And then we have Handling, so we reduce the crosshair size on the Sparkfire shotgun so that it's more accurate. The only downside to this is that long shot and handling don't really affect our nebula, so it only has a range of 8 meters. So if you are not able to use the nebula in some fights because the enemy isn't close enough, then you might want to go for something like the Tech 22 or the MP60, and again apply the fetid wounds And then you might also want to go for something like the Hotshot or the Overflow. Both of them are extremely good. So this is all for the introduction. I hope that you'll enjoy the clips, and as always, have a great day.